Welcome to Two Mystic Mamas, Krystyn.
Two Mystic Mamas, Rachel.
Take 3.
Life does not always happen the way we want it to happen.
Very rarely.
So usually it's me that's stressing over the technology. Today this has been your cross to bear.
Yeah, I'm absorbing your energy.
I know, I'm so sorry.
How you been?
I'm good.
Yeah.
It's been
good weekend.
It was good. It was a good weekend. A busy start to the year.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Very busy, but really good too.
Yes.
Like I have been very intentional about my time and my thoughts and putting good energy out there. Feel like I'm vibrating higher in 2024.
Totally. And I would totally agree with that and I feel so light.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes when you start a new year and you have these goals and you're like, I'm going to accomplish all this. I think having, and we've talked a little bit about this too, but having like big, audacious goals is super intimidating and scary.
Yeah.
At least for me. And so I think we were talking about this the other day too. Like the smallest changes consistently will manifest massive things, right? So like you don't have to, I always use this saying when I am, especially when we're talking about like a tech product, if I'm like focused on like a work project, you don't eat the elephant in one bite, which is actually a terrible thing to think about, eating an elephant. But the idea is elephants are massive and huge. You wouldn't try to eat it in one whole bite. You would, take it apart incrementally. Yes, I would agree that 2024 has definitely started off with a bang. No COVID for me this year. The last 2 years, I definitely was suffering from COVID at New Year's, which just impacts your ability to hit that ground running.
I mean, we got sick in December. Our family did.
Yeah.
You got sick.
We got sick too. I almost feel like there's a pretty good chance I gave you whatever it was.
Right, because we were here and then we went back and got sick. So that tracks.
Yeah. Our topic of the day is
living life off script.
Now, I have always worked for corporations, maybe not corporations, but for businesses, right? Mm-hmm. Where like I would have Monday through Friday set hours. And then, with my last job, it was fully remote. I found the blessing of being remote, doing work, and then also being able to balance being a mom.
Right.
And as a woman who's also a mother, I think that there is something to be said about companies acknowledging that too, not just for the mom, but for parents in general, where, there's this flexibility that just needs to exist in order for us to flourish. Honestly, like I think some parents probably just assume that they can't have it all. And so because they need money, because that supports the family,
right,
they choose to not prioritize that, right? Which is, I'm in between jobs at the moment and I'm looking for another tech job, and it has to have that flexibility, and it has to be a company that understands that, because that is where I'm at. That is where I'm at in the journey of life, is I am raising children.
Yeah.
And I want to be a present parent, but I have a lot to offer as well. And I like that structure of knowing what I'm doing Monday through Friday.
Right.
I do. There is something to be said about that, for how my brain is wired, that enjoys knowing that I have that. Now, I am also in the process of starting my own business too, and becoming an LLC. That will be really interesting to see how that shakes out.
Right.
Because I may still be doing that 9 to 5, but I am the one driving it, right? I'm the one positioning myself and setting my schedule, like you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, trying to honor where you are.
Exactly, because where we're at is not where we're going to be at forever. It's just this space that we're occupying. If you are living according to somebody else's stipulations and rules and expectations, it makes it really hard to know yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, it gets confusing,
right?
Like all of a sudden you're like your ego. It's your fucking ego,
Right.
And when the ego comes in and it just, to your point, it can be really confusing. I know that yeah, I've had to kind of rebound from that, where, when you have time to reflect and decompress and recenter yourself, it is just incredible to look back on it and see how I allowed myself to be kind of spun into something that wasn't honoring, like,
right,
the core
right,
of who I am and how I'm, what I find valuable. Because you get into people pleasing.
100%. Yeah.
I
get into it with like big projects and, long-term clients and stuff like that too, is making sure that I'm staying genuine to who I am, because that's ultimately why people started working with me in the first place.
Right.
Not because I was, just people pleasing.
Right.
Right.
A yes person.
Exactly.
Yeah, I found myself just saying yes to yes to yes to yes to yes, because ultimately I wanted to see the success of what it was I was helping to build.
And you were fully invested in building that.
Emotionally, physically. I mean, I was just...
You were all in.
I was in the deep end, and it was deep.
It's a big change for you.
It was deep. Yeah, it is. But I've never felt more free.
Right.
Which just validates coming back. And so if you're listening to this and you are in a similar predicament with your career choice and what you're focused on, you are not alone. There is always an opportunity to seek change.
Yeah. And I would just invite you to get curious about the how, the why, instead of judging yourself harshly.
Yes.
For choices you have or have not made in your life.
Yep.
Just get curious.
Yeah.
Because I think like a lot of our defense mechanisms, but also a lot of our choices were based on a set of information and skills we had at the time that we don't necessarily need later on. So we can make different choices.
Right. I'm going to throw something out there that's living off script. There is a saying out there, or an unspoken belief, that the longer you've worked at a company, the more loyal you are.
Yes.
And I can tell you from experience that there is something to be said about working at a company for a period of time, garnering experience, moving through the ranks. But if you've been at a company for a long ass time, I'm also going to give you what's the word I'm looking for? Not the opportunity. I'm going to give you the push you need to say you can leave this company. Mm-hmm. You can leave a company after 30 years. You can leave a company after 15. And the company is not going to look at that anymore and be like, wow, they've been so loyal. If something financially shifts, they will drop you like a hot potato.
100%. Because they're only loyal because they're getting something else. Like,
totally. And I don't think anymore, they used to do this thing where like resume recruiters would be like, if you had a big gap in your thing, or if you like jump to jump. But anymore, I mean, don't live within that society norms of you have to stay in a job for at least a year to show that if you're in a toxic environment, or you get hired somewhere and then you start working and you're like, whoa, time out. Like, this is not at all what I signed up for.
Right.
Get out.
Yeah.
Like, honor that in yourself. Listen to yourself. Listen to that intuition, because it will not steer you wrong.
I was thinking about this on the way down, actually. Last year was my 12th year in business, and it was my hardest year financially in business. And 2024 is starting off really wonderfully and beautiful, which I'm very thankful for. I was thinking about the fact that I had gone through this extensive interview process with a company to take on a full-time position. I really thought I wanted it. And I was like, maybe this is just what I need to do now. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe I need to close this chapter, or just, maybe my photography business and like all the marketing, all of it, maybe it needs to be on the side, and I need to have this for a little bit. But through the process, I was like convincing myself that it's what I wanted. When I didn't get it, I was bummed that I wasn't chosen, but I was not bummed that I didn't get that life. And I was driving down here thinking about it today. And I was like, if I had that, I wouldn't have this opportunity here with you now to be able to be creating.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of something that workshop that I mentioned earlier. The woman who was running it said, there were two women, that they had created their business around the life they wanted to live and not the other way around. Mm-hmm. They were not living their life around their business. They created their business around the life that they wanted to live. Mm-hmm. And that has stuck with me for 10 years. And I'm like, okay, I just need to stay the course. Just stay the course. And it always comes back around. It always, welcomes me with open arms when I am open to attracting what I really want.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that there was just a part of me that was totally shut down to that because I didn't want that job as much as I wanted to be chosen. And I really did feel strongly about the company itself and the people that work there. And I'm like, they're doing great work. I would like to be involved with this.
Yep.
I can see myself fitting in really well.
Yeah.
And then just driving down here thinking about, wow, I'm really thankful that didn't happen.
Yeah, totally. And I can appreciate that because there is something to be said about, I remember when I was working at the time was my first job out of college, and I was working as a recruiter. I thought I would really like it because it was working with people, which naturally I adore working with other humans and interacting with other humans and talking with other humans. And that's a big part of my makeup. And so I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to help people get jobs.
Yeah.
Well, it just so happened that there's a ton of people out there that don't actually want to work. Like, they don't want jobs, right? And I was like so perplexed by it. Like, based on your resume, like this would be like a perfect job for you. And it's like, well, there's always like meeting roadblocks and sometimes people are just wired the way they are, right? Like, I find that, like, I was raised by two chefs. So like working with their hands was a big part of what I observed. So I love to work with my hands, right? Like, I love to garden. I love to cook. I talk with my hands, and so some people they don't want to get their hands dirty. They don't actually want to work. Maybe that wasn't something that they watched and observed, but my parents busted their ass, both of them. And I think there's this like mental part of myself too, where like I have to move to work. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like, growing up in the restaurant industry, it's like you have a start to your shift and an end to your shift. And in between, you're doing all of these tasks with your hands. Where when I got into corporate America, I was behind a computer. I was like, am I working? Am I not working? Like, it's like a mental shift that you kind of have to, toggle between sometimes. But where I was going with that was just the fact that I remember getting a job at a fairly large, well-established corporation here in Pittsburgh. And I remember my starting salary was going to be $46,000. It was the most money I had ever made. And I felt like I had made it. Like, I was like, this is such a comfort to know that I will consistently get a paycheck every 2 weeks.
What year was this?
2009. Okay. 2009. Almost 15 years ago.
Oh, that's crazy.
Getting old is, wow, so
it's
strange.
Wild.
But yeah, I remember getting that job and just thinking, yay. And then I had that job and I was with that company for 8 years, 7 years. Mm-hmm. And I think when I left, I was making $55,000, which is not great. Like, that's not how you honor your employees. That's not how you're like, you're doing such a good job. And then I left there and I got a job. I was a project manager, IT project manager, program manager. And I got a job making $75,000, like without even batting an eye. They were like, done.
Right.
Done. I was like, can it really be that easy? And it was the first time too where I still felt comforted by the money, because there is a security part of that for sure.
Right.
Which I think is what some of those jobs, that's what makes them attractive. And also what you're doing, and honoring that. Because then I got another job. I left that other job and then I was making $84,000, most money I'd ever made. And it was so toxic.
Yeah.
And the environment was so bad. And the hours were crazy, and I was away from the kids. I was getting burnt out. It was my first time experiencing burnout, where I was like burning both ends.
Yeah.
That was a job I ended up getting fired from, because then I started to like come back around to like who I was, and like, wait, something's off here. And it was a power play by the person in charge. And, you know, I basically threatened his position, I guess you would say.
I remember this now.
Yeah. And he was like, thank you so much for your service, but today's going to be your last day. And I was like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
That was a hard lesson.
Do you think that people that are in positions of power like that are just living off the script that they think they're supposed to live off of? Or do you think that they actually want to be in those roles?
So in this particular case,
yeah.
So I'm an intuitive empath. So like it's not necessarily judging, but I can discern how people are made up.
Right.
Pretty quickly. And I'm usually like the type of person that they open up to and like talk about all kinds of things without even like initiating that. So this particular person, just knowing him and the conversations we had in his office and his background and like how he was raised, he was very socially awkward, but he was smart and brilliant.
Yeah.
And so he did rise up through the ranks in these leadership roles. But when it came to like working with people like myself that made him uncomfortable because I asked questions that really made him think and kind of made him feel uncomfortable with his behavior, that was a threat. And, you know, I find that with people like that, especially men, that feel threatened by women, they go to the easiest solution, which is, how do I get rid of this person?
Right. I don't want to deal with this anymore. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right. Because even like his executive assistant, I was really close with her, and I was like, you know, his behavior is inappropriate. You know that this is not the solution. But she was not in a position that she was going to challenge that at all.
Right.
Which is not uncommon.
Right. And I think it's not uncommon for many reasons, but also when it does trickle down to that basic level of safety and security, when we feel like we need to maintain this thing or everything's going to fall apart.
Right.
Then we start making choices that we might look back on and be like, oh, I wish I had made a different choice.
Totally.
And maybe not. Maybe she, like, you know, but I know for me, if that baseline of safety and stability is threatened or compromised, that's when I start making choices that I feel like aren't intuitively aligned with who I am.
Well, and I was ignoring that, right? Like I had been getting signs from the universe that I needed to quit.
Yeah.
Like very clear, very vivid.
Get the fuck out!
Very like in my face. And I was like, no. I've never made this much money. It doesn't matter that I am basically internally combusting. I am going to stay here. And then I got fired.
Right.
There were so many lessons in that. Getting fired, and this is probably a topic for another podcast, but it is a form of rejection. And I am not used to being rejected, nor do I like it.
Right.
I mean, I don't know too many people that do. Like, I've never met anybody that's like, I love to be rejected and shit on. Well, maybe people that go to dominatrix, but. And so I was like,
that took me way longer to process.
Those people, like, there are actually a group of people that love to be rejected and told what to do and smacked around. I'm not one of those people.
But maybe they don't actually want to be rejected. Maybe they just want to be accepted for wanting to be smacked around.
I don't know, maybe. But all I know is it took me a very long time to process getting fired. I mean, physically, I processed it in that moment, right? Like, they walked my ass out of there. They wouldn't let me go back to the desk. I couldn't say goodbye to anybody I worked with. I mean, it was like a very dramatic situation. Like, I sat in my car and cried for like 25 minutes. Like, how could this have happened to me?
Right.
I'm not the type of person to get fired. Like I was, but there were so many gifts that came out of that and opportunities and blessings that had I listened to the universe before,
right,
and had I taken steps, that it would not have happened that way.
Right, but maybe it needed to.
Well, I think, when it started happening again a year ago,
yeah,
I was way more aligned.
Right.
And
prepared.
Open to the signs and,
right.
and feeling the energy shift. And I resigned, right? Like I left before it got to that point, because I think I had let it, because then I had no relationships with anybody from that previous company, because I was like, on some level, like mad at all of them, even though none of them were the ones that fired me, but they were all associated.
Right.
So I was like, no, can't be friends with any of you. It is fascinating to watch how things change as you grow. Right. And as you learn, because the universe gives us, like, for me, it always seems to be like a physical thing that I witness with people being injured. So at the last job, I witnessed a head-on crash where everybody thankfully was fine. Nobody was hurt, but it was a whole emotional scene. It was like raining. I had to help the woman that got hit, like all of this stuff. And then this past time, it was my neighbor who suffered a physical injury, and I had to help and call an ambulance for, and she was also fine. She needed surgery and rehab, but like she physically, like she's recovered. But it was one of those things that when it happened again, the energy had already started to shift at my place of employment. And I was like, oh shit, it's happening again. But I was more aligned. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen. I'm not gonna.
It's crazy how the universe will make it known. If you're open to listening.
Yeah, yeah, there are signs. It's funny because when I started taking this angel practitioner communication class that I'm taking, one of the things that she said that we should do is write down when we get signs from the angels. Write down, or the universe, or the divine, or whoever it is that you refer to. Right. Write them down. And when you start journaling, in general, journaling is an incredible exercise for so many things. But I was shocked. So right after I started taking that course, it was actually, I hadn't started taking it yet, but I had signed up for it. And we were having Graham's birthday party down here. There was a triple rainbow. A triple rainbow. Now, I know a lot of people have seen double rainbows, but it was the first time in my life that I had seen a triple rainbow. You are a rainbow girl. And I am a rainbow lady. I always have been since I was a little tiny tyke, and so rainbows have always resonated with me. It didn't click until recently why, but that has always been a very distinct sign from my angels to me. Always. Or my spirit guides. Like rainbows have always been my jam. And so now I'm like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Yep. Okay.
Listen for your signs. And something we talked about was asking specific questions
for help.
And and guidance.
Yes.
And
because it's the law of free will.
When we were like, we've talked about this podcast for a year and a half or more now.
Yeah. About executing it. About doing it. Yeah.
But then when we really started to put, the wheels in motion, and
this was right before everything started blowing up for me. Right. We put dates in a calendar in September.
Yep. I remember I was like writing, I have like a manifestation, a journal that I keep. I have like an altar that I keep at home. I had specifically written in there for signs. Is this the right time for us to put my energy into the podcast?
That's a good story. Yeah.
Or if it's not, and I asked specifically, if it is, please show me a sign in the form of some sort of light source.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yep.
And if it's not, then please send a sign in the form of an owl. which like we have owls that live around our house.
Yes.
And I was like, there's light everywhere. We have owls that live here. Like either of these things could happen at any time. But if there's a true sign, I'm going to know it.
Yep.
And then it was 4 days later, magically, out of nowhere, our oven light popped on, which was the symbol that I had asked for. Yes,
broken for.
It's been broken since
you've lived in the house or whatever.
Right. Even I don't know what it is because even the stove we had before the oven light was broken, so it's never worked.
No.
And all of a sudden the oven light was on, and I was like, "What is happening right now?" And then I turned it off with the button. It turned off, and I tried to turn it back on again, and it would not turn on.
No.
And it hasn't turned on since.
No, yeah.
And I was like, okay, got my sign. Thank you for being real fucking clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now is the time. But I also think, and we talked about this, all of the technology issues that we're having in the infancy of this are giving us time and space to clear out the fucking baggage. Because there's certain baggage that we do not want to carry along with us as we move into this next step with our podcast, just generally leveling up our life.
Yeah.
Those things aren't meant for us.
No.
We're clearing the way. We're clearing the path. And this is all giving us time to be where we need to be at the right time.
Well, yeah. And I think podcasting takes practice.
Right. 100%.
You know, and even though we had the idea and we knew we had the chemistry to make it successful, it's like riding a bike. It's like learning a new trick. It's these small little steps that we're taking to bring it full circle. So, because this probably is going to be our best episode yet.
I'm excited. I think so.
Yeah.
So I invite you to look at yourself with curiosity.
Yes.
And what tiny little step can you take today, whether it's a physical step or a mental step or an emotional step, to move you closer to yourself.
Even if you've been stuck in, whether it's a relationship that's not serving you or a job that's not serving you, and you're trying to refocus on your purpose, it definitely starts within. It definitely starts with where you're at. Journaling is an amazing opportunity to just get it out of your head onto something. I mean, even using your phone as a journal, and YouTube. I mean, there are so many things out there on YouTube, guided meditations, journal prompts. Barnes and Noble is like the jam, or if you have a local bookstore too. Just go out and buy a journal, or just grab a piece of, a pad of paper, a piece of paper, and get it out of your head onto something. I do love, and we've talked about this on a couple of the other podcasts, but it's worth mentioning every time it comes into my head. Journaling gratitude in the morning and in the evening. I tend to just do it in my brain, but I just roll through all of the things that I am grateful for. I'm living off script. This morning, my son was having a sleepover. It was getting time for the kid to go back to his house. And Graham was naturally like, well, can I go with him to basketball practice? And can I go with him? And he clearly did not want the play date to come to an end, even though it was nearing that point. And I brought him up because he was getting upset. And I was like, listen, I need you to find gratitude in what you've had for the last 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever it was. Everything has a beginning and everything has an end. So let's not let the sleepover end on a sour note because I have said no to something, because we all have busy lives. I'm not sure what they're doing. And I have this thing about not imposing on people. So my kids love to be social beings, but they tend to ask, can I come over? Can I do this? Can I ride in your car? And sometimes it's fine and it's appropriate, but then other times I'm like, you have to not do that. People need to feel encouraged to want to have, because it all takes energy. And as a mom, and I'm a very flexible mom, as are you, but it has to fit in within the constraints of what our daily lives are. And sometimes it just doesn't. And that's okay. But teaching the kids to find gratitude in what they do have instead of what they don't. Oh man, that is a practice that it benefits me at 41, and it sure as hell will benefit my kids. if they wrap their heads around it now too.
Right. Well, I had a girlfriend make that same suggestion to me a few years ago when Charlie and I were trying to get pregnant and, whatever. And she was like, focus on what you have, not on what you don't. And it has been such great advice.
And one you can go back to.
Right.
All the time.
And everything. I do want to say, though, I love that your kids ask, and Evie does this too, ask to do things. They want to do this. There's something really, really beautiful in their ability at a young age to ask for what they want. And it's really about parenting them in a way that they can continue to ask for what they want in life. But let's do it in a meaningful way that works for us. And that's just going to come naturally as they get older and they have more impulse control and, all of those things.
Yeah.
But there's something really beautiful and raw about their ability to ask for what they want in life. And that's literally the advice we're telling our listeners is ask for what you want out of the universe.
Yes. Yes. And for what you want out of yourself.
Right.
I keep, speaking of manifesting and being intentional, I tell myself, Rachel, you have the most incredible tech job working for an incredible company that serves the greater human race and Mother Earth, and you are making an incredible salary. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that I say.
Right.
I literally put that out there as it has already happened. Emmeline said we have in our shower. This is a product that everybody should go out and buy, and it's not expensive. But there are water notes. You can write notes in the shower.
Really?
Yeah.
I usually just use my hair that falls out and put it in notes on the wall. Charlie went in one day and said, "I love you" in hair.
No, it's not weird. Do you know that I have had thoughts about making art out of those designs that come up on the wall? This is only for women that have a lot of hair and you take showers and it's what you cannot let that hair go down the drain.
No.
Okay. It'll fuck up everything in your house. Well, your pipes. That's a side note, but I used to want to make art out of it.
Really?
Take up, not the hair itself, but the designs that it would make, maybe with lines or pens or something. I don't know how, but I also want to make art with birds on wires and
you and the bird
telephone poles. Well, birds are always my thing.
The whole reason that we talked about doing this episode was because I heard a quote, and the quote was, "Don't live the same year 75 times and call it a life."
And that's true. Spice it up.
It doesn't have to, you don't have to live the same life all the time.
Go be a stripper. I have a feeling Stevie is going to live the same life 75. Well, not 75, but. All right. Tune in. Next week, we'll have a new, fresh episode talking about something wonderful and great and real.
I think we have some...
we're all real.
Energetic housekeeping to discuss.
Fantastic. Yeah. How to create a space that has free-flowing energy. How to bring more wonderful light and love into your home. Whatever that looks like.
Body as well.
Yes. And yep. So... we love you.
Lots of love.
And we let you go.
Bye.
Bye.